I'm gonna have to glue this, aren't I?
Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation, where I review action figures and then articulate 5 points to help you decide if you want to add that figure to your collection. The 5 points I discuss are packaging, presentation, posability, playability, and price. I'm Jason, and if you enjoy my content, please like, share, subscribe, do all of the YouTube rigmarole. Today, we're taking a look at the DC Multiverse Dr. Fate from the upcoming Black Adam movie. Starting off with the packaging, we can see that this is a bit of a departure from the DC Multiverse box. Big old Black Adam logo down there. We also see it at the top. Name and logos on one side, name on the other, legal on the bottom, and the UPC for those who want it. Unlike the static digital renders we have been seeing, this is a nice art piece. Colorful comic-style interpretation of the character. Hints at superpowered accessories that we could have been getting. And again, the Black Adam logo down here. It's a refreshing change of pace, and honestly, I'd like to see more of it. For packaging, I'm giving Dr. Fate 1 whole point. Moving on to presentation, and Dr. Fate stands at just over 7¼ inches. Because the movie hasn't come out yet, and we've seen so little of it, I can't speak to how accurate it is, but I do really like what I'm seeing. In my review of the Injustice 2 Dr. Fate, I said this would make for a great live-action costume, but honestly, I like this so much better. From the top, and the first thing you'll notice is that he doesn't have any eyes. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Fate is actually an archaeologist named Kent Nelson who found this magic helmet. Spewing magic helmet! Magic helmet. It essentially makes him an avatar for the god Nabu, and to me, the lack of eyes suggests that it's Nabu who's doing the actual seeing. It's a small but unique idea, but I dig it. I don't dig it so much I'm not going to do a head swap, but that's a conversation for playability. One small detail I appreciate is that you can see his actual chin underneath. It's something they could have cheaped out on, but I'm glad that they didn't. Interesting, all these dents and shapes on there. Another thing about the helmet that I like is that there's a kind of sun fold to it. If you look at the way the light hits it, it's more in bands. It just creates an interesting geometry. I'll be honest, when I saw this shoulder armor, I got kind of nervous. I figured it was going to be a really hard plastic that would get in the way of articulation, but no, it's actually very nice and soft. Of course, we've got the suggestion of an ankh in the middle, and to be honest, this kind of looks like a pair of eyes. While we're zoomed in, I do want to take a moment to comment on the amazing texturing. We see ankhs throughout the design, but they're surrounded by other tiny hieroglyphs. Flipping them around, and we can see more of that on the cape. Unlike the comic, where it's all gold, the movie version is dark on the outside and gold on the inside. As we can see, there are more ankhs, and also more hieroglyphs. In fact, this is so finely sculpted, you can kind of make them out. The level of detail and craftsmanship that went into this figure is honestly off the scale. Not surprisingly, because it's a movie, the costume is very, very dark. I can definitely see a hint of blue in there, but it almost feels black. The figure also benefits from McFarlane's new style of wrist balls. Compared to the wrists on the last Dr. Fate we looked at, this is a huge leap forward. The other artifact that Dr. Fate has is the Amulet of Anubis. I'm assuming that this is it. In general, I do like this aesthetic. All these overlapping rounded layers feel a lot more organic, something more supernatural than made by a person. Moving on down the leg, and we have more of that incredible detail. Even the back of the knee's been textured, which is very much appreciated. And then we get to these really cool boots. Similar to the wrist, and the ankle joints have been updated, but not much more to see at the very bottom. As much as I've enjoyed my Injustice 2 version, this one has a lot of really creative design choices, and I'm really excited to see him in action. For presentation, I'm giving Dr. Fate 1 whole point. Moving on to posability, and I'm honestly pretty impressed. As usual, his head's on a dumbbell joint. He can look up this much, which surprised me because of this lip in the back of the helmet, and he can look this far down. I thought that this tip was going to get in the way too, but it's honestly been engineered really, really well. He also gets an incredible amount of tilt, and all the way around. Moving on down, he has swivel hinge shoulders that raise 90 degrees. Again, this is nice and soft and doesn't get in the way. He does have a rotator cuff underneath, bicep swivel, double jointed elbows, and those really great new wrist balls that can swivel and hinge. Shifting to the torso, and unlike the previous Dr. Fate, this one has a diaphragm joint and a dumbbell waist. He can actually arch back a fair amount. Using that in his neck articulation, and here's the flying pose you can get him in. As usual, he can't really hunch forward that far. That said, he does get a bit of tilt and twist. Below the waist, and Dr. Fate has the typical McFarlane hips. They can kick forward almost 90 degrees, and do a perfect split. Pretty decent amount of twist at the hip, double jointed knees, toe articulation, and my ankle ball is about to rip off from trying to twist it. Yeah, both of these feet are really, really stiff. The other one swivels okay, they also hinge, but neither of them want to pivot. I'm gonna have to glue this, aren't I? With the exception of the ankles, which is more of a production quality issue than an engineering one, the articulation on this figure is really solid. I'm particularly impressed with the range in the neck, and also how unhindered the shoulders are in spite of the armor. Word of warning, don't make my mistake. If the joints are fighting you, heat them up and don't try to force them. For posability, I'm giving Dr. Fate 1 whole point.
Moving on to playability, and Dr. Fate comes with a trading card. If you want to read what it says, pause here. He also comes with a DC Multiverse flight stand. And voila! Unfortunately, he once again does not come with any magic effects.
But playability is more than accessories, it's also about how well your figure plays with others.
For the only other Dr. Fate in my collection, here we have Injustice 2. We've already been looking at it, but here's a proper side-by-side. And for the only Black Adam in my collection, here we have Endless Winter. I am planning a review of this figure, so stay tuned. And then moving on to some other DC heroes, here we have Superman. This, of course, is the Henry Cavill version. But just to see how well he works with some of your comic figures, here he is with Action Comics 1000, and here he is with Rebirth. For a Dark Knight collection, and here we have Batfleck, Battinson, 3 Jokers, and my custom Hush. Since I posted the video, I swapped out the legs for Rebirth to make them a bit shorter. I'm a bit torn because the boots look better, but the knee pads are inaccurate. Rounding out the Trinity is Wonder Woman. Here's the one designed by McFarlane, here's Endless Winter, and here's the New 52 by DC Collectibles. Zipping on over to the Flash, and here we have Ezra Miller, the one who isn't an alleged criminal, DC Multiverse, and DC Essentials. For Aquaman, here we have the Justice League Jason Momoa, and Endless Winter. For the only Cyborg in my collection, here we have Justice League, but for a couple of Green Lanterns, and here we have the Endless Winter John Stewart, and the DC Essentials Hal Jordan. For one more live-action DC comparison, and here we have Harley Quinn from Suicide Squad, but for a video game comparison, and here we have Green Arrow, and then for a comic book comparison, here we have Lex Luthor. For the Marvel character he's most often compared to, here's Dr. Fate with Doctor Strange. On the subject of Marvel, for a roll-to-scale comparison, here he is with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here he is with Stealth Iron Man. Of course, one thing I'm sure you're very curious about, and honestly I am too, is a head swap between these. Fortunately, the golds match up perfectly, and this looks awesome. Now that I have it on there, I can see a slight difference to the gold. This one's a bit more yellow, and this one is a bit more brassy. Either way, just standing on your shelf and you'll never notice, and honestly, I think that this is how I'm going to be displaying him. One thing that does suffer a little bit is articulation. He can look down fine, and the tilt is still awesome, but because of the back of the helmet, he cannot look up. If you're curious about the inverse, here you go. Since there's already a couple of different shades of gold in there, I think that this one matches a bit better. Oddly enough, he can't look up much either, but down's no problem. Either way, both of these swaps are very, very cool. Just notice that he doesn't have an ear on this side.
I'm honestly pretty undecided as far as how deep into this wave I'm gonna go. Obviously, I want Black Adam himself, and maybe the Megafigs. But until such a time as McFarlane gives us a comic book version, that's the collection this guy's going in. The only thing that holds this figure back is the lack of energy effects. McFarlane Toys managed to give Godspeed and the Flash a bunch of them, and while I acknowledge that there is a certain level of value to the flight stand, we already have a bunch of those. Fortunately, I still have extras from Marvel Legends. For playability, I'm giving Dr. Fate half a point. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. I found Dr. Fate at an online store called Figurine for All for only $20. The shipping was reasonable and it arrived pretty fast. With the exception of the faulty ankle and lack of accessories, I am very happy with this figure, and hopefully this video's helped you figure out if you'd like it too. For price, I'm giving Dr. Fate 1 whole point for a grand total of 4.5 out of 5. For my only other Dr. Fate video, check out this one on Injustice 2, or for another movie-related video, check out this one on the Suicide Squad. How excited are you for Black Adam? Sound off in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.